Good morning. Welcome to Evelina's Way, where yesterday's survival are today's lessons. Today we're going to be talking about sustainability and how women got material from flour sacks or feed sacks for their animals. So y'all hang in there with me and we will start to think and prepare for understanding how we can do things with our own two hands. Thank you all for watching, and now here's your video. Good morning. This is Marcia from Evelina's Way. Today I want to talk about what people did in the 1940s for clothes. My mother was born in 1941, and they lived in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas. And my grandmother would tell the story about when the men went to town to buy flour or to buy whatever flour, she would hand them a little swatch of material and say, get this swatch to match. And what that meant was that little girls and women bought their material, so I can get a close-up of that. That's my mama. From flour sacks. It was a way for you to get two things in one. My grandmother was a seamstress, out of necessity, I think. I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, that most people could sew, but my grandmother excelled at it. She, once she got hold of a machine, and I've got a machine coming that was my mother's that has, it's pedaled. It's not hooked to electricity. You used your feet to sew. And when I get that, I'm going to show you all an example of that. But anyway, my Grandma Faye would say, when you go get flour, look for this sack. And the sack would have a pattern, an array of different kinds of patterns on it, material. And so when they were feeding flour or making bread, which is something that they did, especially in the Ozark Mountains, in the 1940s things were a little ahead in some places and a little behind in others. And in the Ozark Mountains it was harder and more primitive. Now, I say that as not a down or not a negative. It's not a negative. They worked hard. They understood that if they did not work hard, then they weren't gonna be able to have what they need for the season. And we've talked about raising your food for your sustainability. But other ways that they did sustainability was flour sack clothes, flour sack dresses. And my grandmother, Faye, which was Evelina's daughter, would tell them, make sure this matches, make sure that this little swatch of material she would give them would match the feed sack that they were going to get, or the flour sack that they were going to get, so that she could have enough material to make a dress big enough for what they needed, which I thought was very interesting. We go to the store and we buy clothes. Some of us can sew, but back then the harder you worked, the more you had. And my grandma Faye and Evelina were never ever deterred by hard work. Evelina had a outhouse until the 1950s and didn't think anything about it, and kind of was not super comfortable having plumbing in the house, like sewer in the house. They cleaned all their clothes on, and I remember this even in the 1960s when I was born, after 1960s, that my granny still had the wringer washer where you would wash and it would agitate in one side, and you would take the clothes and run it through rollers and rinse it into a clean tub, and the dirty water would run back in the dirty side. And she would do that, and she'd run it back through the roller, and then she'd throw it in a basket, and she hung her clothes outside. There wasn't a dryer for her then. Now, there were dryers, but for her, having something other than a washboard was a big step up. And hard work lends itself to being productive. Since this society, we have very little that we have to physically work for. We bring in a paycheck, and that paycheck does all the things that people used to do with their hands, like milking a cow and putting in a garden and making their own clothes and their own curtains. And there was not excess. I also have, from some of my mama's things, I have a butter churn. I've got two different kinds that they would have used back in time. One is you put your cream in a container, and it has paddles, and you turn it until you get butter, and the cream goes to butter. Another way is an actual butter churn, that you have the container in it, you push down and push down and push down. And if you ever watched John Wayne, True Grit, he mentioned something in there about to the actress there, which was, that instead of being here trying to find your father's murderer, you need to be at home churning. Because, they didn't go to the store and they didn't buy their butter. They might have had a farmer around, which my great-grandpa was the farmer that was around, and that made the butter, and that made, that brought the milk to his customers. So I just wanted to put this out there and just really realize that our lives are easy, in the physical sense are easy. I think being able to have access to everything we need just by walking in a store and picking it out is kind of made us reliant, which is the goal of merchants, of course, reliant upon something other than our own two hands to do things. And even though I go to the store and I buy my clothes, I buy, I still think about what goes into it. And if a person sews any, and you have material that you make into something, which I like to do that, then you really look at, it's just not going to picking it off a rack. My grandmother, Faye, of course, she was a seamstress, and she worked hard. When she was a girl, she lived on a farm. She worked hard, physically hard. And when she was 6 years old, and this is hard for us to even imagine, she was taking care of her infant brother, and because Granny and Grandpa and Uncle Thurman were out in the field. She took care of the baby, and she did the cooking at 6. And we're thinking, okay, at 6. But you were raised back then to know how to handle things. So when my she did that. I mean, she worked like that. So when my grandmother Faye got a chance to go to a factory and work, it was like, wow, this is great, because I get to earn money and take that money and turn it into something else. But she still sewed. She still cooked from scratch. Very rarely ate out. But what she did was she took her resources that she had when she was growing up, the knowledge, which was her resources, and she worked in a factory, but then she would come home and she would sew, and she would can, and she would cook, and so she used all her resources for her advantage. She was not lazy. She was not a lazy woman, and I wish I was more and more like her, because she didn't let things stop her, because it was easy compared to what it was when she grew up. They cut wood, for their stove, and my granny cooked on a wood stove, and my grandma cooked on a wood stove, and if they wanted extra, like for instance, if they wanted something sweet, then they would run my grandpa Perry had a sugar cane field, and they would run the sugar cane through a processor, and the mules would walk around and around and around, and this processor would take the sugar cane and shred it and get the sugar out, and then they would boil it down, and it would take days to do the boiling. You have to boil it down, then it goes to the next level and boils down, and at the end of it you get some jars of molasses. Honey was the other thing. If you could get a hold of bees, you had your honey. And a lot of the bees that they did, the bee work back then, was they found a beehive in a tree, and then they went and got it. So when I'm talking about these things, I want people to understand what we have, and that we can make use of our knowledge and add work to what we're doing to make things better, or we can just accept that things are easy and not do anything proactive to make what we've learned beneficial, continuing on like Grandma was sewing when there was no options of clothes, flour sacks. And then as she got older, she got a job and she got a regular plug-in sewing machine, and she made clothes for all of us. I know, she made my mama's wedding dress. She made all of the bridesmaids' dresses. She made all of our clothes when we were little. She made so many things, and she was not afraid. She cooked a full Sunday dinner every Sunday and loved it. And the work that even goes into cooking, people don't even want to do that now. They want it just kind of, I've gone to work and now I'm going to sit down and I want it handed to me. So I'm not saying that prosperity, the kind of prosperity we have, is wrong. I'm just saying that we need to be very aware of how we use that prosperity. We can use our prosperity to learn how to survive, because you never know when something's going to just fall in, like our economy. And knowing how to milk a cow, and knowing how to raise a garden, and knowing how to sew when you can get a hold of material, knowing how to do these fundamental things can be the difference between having a oppressive life and a very rich life. Being lazy, which I consider myself lazy when it comes to what my grandmother did, it's not going to be beneficial as things change. Yes, we always hope that things will move forward, but the benefit of having knowledge of how they did it when they didn't have anything to do it with, no electricity, you had to have a well for water, which means that you put a bucket down that well and you drew your water. You heated your house with wood, and you didn't have air conditioning in the summer to cool your house down. My mother didn't have air conditioning until it was in the 50s when she moved to Florida. Then they had an air conditioner. And my mama didn't have a dryer until the 1970s, because she used cloth diapers, and I use cloth diapers as well. She used cloth diapers, and she washed them, and she hung them in the Florida sunshine, which we were living in Florida at that time. And she hung them on the clothesline. And her diapers were as pretty and white as they could be. There wasn't any Pampers back then that were worth anything. You wash them, and you put them on the line to dry. We've gotten so far away from that. You just think about, people just not wanting to deal with those kinds of things. But women took a lot of pride in what they did as far as how their laundry looked, how things were, because you didn't have 20 dresses hanging in your closet, or 10 pairs of pants, or a bunch of shoes. You had, if you were lucky, you had a pair of shoes to go to school in. And I'm talking like 1920s and 30s and 40s. You were lucky to have that to go to school. And it was generally because someone killed a hog in the fall, and everybody got a pair of shoes for fall and for winter. So I just wanted to share this, and let's just keep in mind that we are really richly blessed, and we need to constantly consider what happens if we can't go to the local grocery store and just pick off the shelf what we want. We need to figure out what we would do and have a backup plan, and knowledge and books and things that you can refer to. So if the worst comes, you're ready. You're just ready for it. And that is the most important thing in my mind that we can do, is to learn what we need to do, practice with it, so that if something happens, you got it. And even if something doesn't happen, you can take pride in the fact that you made your own cream. That you took that cream and you made butter. Or you can take pride that you grew your own green beans. Or you can take pride that you made that outfit. Or that you have these skills, these fundamental skills, to do things like wiring and plumbing and all of those things. And figure out how to do that. How to make your life better with your knowledge, and then the effort that goes into that. So this is Marcia from Evelina's Way, and I just wanted to kind of touch base and just kind of help us to think, okay, we are extremely blessed, but our blessings, I think, also have made us lazier, and that we need to really think about our skills and think about the things that we know how to do, and at least get used to doing them in case you ever have to. Then you can go right back to your memory. It's not something you have to look up or understand. You got it. And so when I purchase books on any kind of survival or learning how to do anything, I get them in paperback or paper so I can put them in my hand. Because who knows if we're going to have computers. And people think, oh, well, we always assume that we will. But computers can be pretty volatile. It can be, they could be wiped out in a blink of an eye. So anyway, God bless you, and you all have a wonderful day. And we will work on our next video, and it's going to be more active. I'm going to be talking about the chickens because I have my little ones keep getting out still, and it's driving me crazy. And I haven't had time here to actually try and figure out a solution. And using what I have, not going to buy other things. So have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching Evelina's Way. I hope you gained some information from this. If y'all have any requests on anything for me to go over, I would be honored to do so. Please leave a comment. Please like and subscribe. And if anybody has any dresses that were made from Speed Sacks, I would love to see pictures of them. And once again, God bless you. Y'all have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow.